Hello, this is Noora Aberman from the International Food Policy Research Institute. Thank you for joining me for my presentation on leveraging food systems for improved diets in Ghana. In Ghana, economic growth and development were improving at the time of writing, but were also coinciding with pervasive rural food and nutrition insecurity, as well as the early stages of a nutrition transition. We apply mixed methods analysis here to explore the risks and opportunities of this situation, and in order to identify localized food-based interventions to improve diets. This builds on a 5-step value chain for nutrition diagnostic process shown here and laid out in Jelly et al. 2015. Here we focus on the rural poor and we contrast northern and southern regions of the country. Some related studies provide insights into food systems in this context. Some studies suggest that small-scale producers in Ghana are not fully tapping into the rising urban demand, and instead urban diets are increasingly dependent on imported and processed food products. In the Zambian context, Harris et al. Demonstrate that the nutrition transition underway in that country is negatively affecting the diets both of the rural poor and the more affluent urban populations, suggesting that we should be considering some of these interlinkages. Here we undertake 8 community case studies across 4 regions of Ghana, interviewing households and market vendors and analyzing food consumption data. We find food and nutrient gaps throughout the sample population. Per capita consumption estimates suggest that micro and macronutrients that we considered are consumed in inadequate levels compared to requirements. And diets are dominated by staple foods, both in the north and the south. A wide range of nutrient-rich foods like vegetables, fruits, legumes, these are all consumed, but in very small amounts. And in the south, they consume more vegetables and animal foods, but also more oil and sweets in accordance with the nutrition transition that's underway. Interestingly, we find that chili pepper provides almost half the vitamin A consumed in both regions. And we find fish and eggs, while consumed in very small amounts, have the potential to be an important source of nutrients. Throughout the study sites, there's a strong appreciation of flavor and variety among the households we talk to. Recipes are diverse with many different vegetables, seeds, legumes, dried smoked fish used in small amounts. And interviews suggest an appreciation of some nutrient-rich foods and their value, but limited understanding of required amounts or frequencies. There are multiple staples that are rotated by season, and that helps households avoid major food shortages. But seasonal barriers to availability of fresh vegetables and fruits severely limits their consumption. Consumption of all animal foods is limited due to the price. And processed and packaged foods play an important role. They're ubiquitous in even the most extremely remote communities that we went to, and this includes traditional and industrial processing. There are dried and ground pepper that's sort of locally processed. There's tomato tins and bouillon cubes that are all quite common in these areas. From our market interviews, we found that market patterns and opportunities differ by type of market. In rural markets, they have demand patterns that are closely connected to farmer production patterns and decisions about whether to keep or sell the produce. We find that generally when one farmer is selling, all farmers are selling the same thing, and this really limits the marketing opportunities. In addition, highly perishable and seasonal foods like fruits and vegetables are particularly hard to market in this context. Alternatively, urbanized markets are those located in large towns or tertiary cities, where a substantial proportion of the consumers are getting their incomes outside of primary agricultural production, and so the demand patterns are somewhat delinked from the agricultural season. And this provides opportunities to the rural producers around those areas. There's more selling opportunities in season as well as off season if they can manage to produce in the off season. Finally, we categorize important nutritious foods by their supply and demand characteristics in order to identify promising food system interventions. First, we look at low demand and high supply foods on the bottom left, such as dried fish and eggs, and consumption of these can be supported by increasing nutrition knowledge, enhancing practices, and the nutrient density of local recipes, for instance. Some high potential modalities include community-based nutrition messaging and improved school curricula on nutrition. In the upper left quadrant, foods with low demand and major seasonal barriers to supply, like fruits and vegetables, can be systematically incorporated into food distribution programs, for instance, school meals, to enhance the diets of those school-age children and also stimulate local production and marketing of these foods. Supply-side interventions are also important for seasonal vegetables and fruits. Small-scale irrigation, for instance, for vegetables can enhance off-season consumption and allow producers to take advantage of the demand in those urbanized markets and smooth out their income throughout the year. Road infrastructure, mobile cold storage, and other innovative approaches can be strategically developed to increase the availability of these foods, especially near these urbanized markets for sale. In the upper right quadrant, when we look at fresh tomato and fresh chili pepper, we find that the processing of these foods, which are highly preferred foods and ingredients in just about every recipe in Ghanaian cuisine, it already allows consumers to fill those seasonal gaps. So we do see that this does work to fill some of the gaps and the diet challenges that people are facing. Right, so thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to your questions and comments during the live session.